Hi there, this is John Keirstead from Arctic Spas, Vancouver Island, with another video. It's interesting, we've had a number of people talk to me and they've said, you know, hey, I go out to my spa and it's the weekend and I realize I'm out of an important chemical that I need to treat the spa. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk to people about is we actually have a lot of stuff in our house that you could actually use in your hot tub instead of some of the chemicals that you might be using already. One of the most common ones that people don't think about is bleach. You know, at Arctic Spas Vancouver Island, we promote the use of salt systems, and when you use a salt system, it takes the NaCl of the salt that's dissolved in the water and actually converts it to NaClO, which is sodium hypochlorite. And sodium hypochlorite is bleach. Now, if you're going to use that, we recommend that you use the actual liquid chlorine that's been engineered for pools and spas. The thing about this is a non-stabilized chlorine, and this is going to be a lot stronger, like 2 to 3 times stronger than if you used household bleach. But if you're in a pinch and it's the weekend and you can't get to the store or otherwise, and your tub looks like it needs a little extra chlorine in there, or in place of using shock or refresh, you could actually use bleach instead of doing that. In the old days when they first came up with the hot tub business, you know, and it was barrels, bleach was the primary sanitizer that was used back then. Of course, companies don't want me to tell you that because they would rather sell you the expensive chlorines and stuff, but the fact is that those chemical chlorines, the most prominent one used now is the granular, which would be sodium dichlor, or if you use tablets, that's the sodium trichlor. Both of those products are actually stabilized chlorine. I have other videos talking about why you shouldn't use stabilized chlorines, but the bottom line is you shouldn't use stabilized chlorines. And it's not easy to find, unless you're looking for it, the unstabilized chlorines. A couple of reasons why I like the liquid form is we're actually purifying a liquid, and so I want to point out, so you can just use any bleach. This isn't very concentrated, so like on a typical 200 to 300 gallon spa, you'd probably have to use like a half cup of this as a sanitized treatment. You use it when you get out of the spa. Now this is actually what you want if you're going to use this, is you want one that's just the sodium hypochlorite and water, like diluted sodium hypochlorite. You don't want, and I'm going to point it out, I brought in this is Clorox with FiberGuard, right? When they add additives to here, this particular one says scented bleach, so they've added a scent additive and they've added something for to make it so that your fiber, protect your fibers of your material, but basically they're adding other chemicals in there, and so I don't recommend using this. This is fine for doing your laundry, but not for adding to your hot tub. It goes back to my philosophy of we don't want to put anything in here that you don't necessarily need, right? And the least amount of chemicals to maintain safe water is what we're going for here. So yeah, you can just get this. I think this was from the dollar store, a couple of bucks for a jug of it. And something like this, you could literally use just this as your chlorine if you wanted. The key with it is it doesn't last long. It's used, or alternatively, you could say it works very quickly. When you add it in there, just like you were adding shock or any other chemical, you leave the lid open for 15, 20 minutes, get the jets cycling so it moves all around and is able to get to all the different areas. And this will start working immediately. My recommendation is that if you're going to use fast-acting type of chlorine like this, you use this when you get out of the spa. And what happens is that it starts reacting, and by the time you get into your spa the next time, there's almost no sanitizer in the water, and then once again, you'd add it when you get out. The nice thing about that is you're not really sitting in any chemical when you're actually in the hot tub. One of the other things I really like about using the liquid chlorine product is that if you are using a salt system like we do on the Arctic spas, it integrates fully into the chemistry that's already in your spa. Whereas if you're using a granular chlorine or you're using tablets to support your saltwater spa, it's not gonna, it's a different form of chlorine. You know, a lot of our competitors will tell you, oh, it's the same, they're just using chlorine. It's not the same. You know, those are manufactured in a very specific way, and they're a very long chemical formula, and it doesn't integrate into the existing system. And so what happens is when that stuff reacts, it forms chloramines, and those chloramines will not go out of your water. And so that means they're going to collect and build up over time, and you have to drain your tub sooner. Whereas if you use the liquid form of the chlorine, it'll integrate right in and it'll form another salt, and your salt system will just perform as normal. I often recommend people use this when they first fill up their spa, because normally Spa Boy will kick on and run. And as we know, when you use Spa Boy, it's producing the sanitizer, but it's also producing some pH up at the same time, which is like sodium hydroxide. So it's a very strong base. And so every time you make some sanitizer, you're also making some pH up, so your pH has a tendency to rise. If you add the chlorine, you're going to build that chlorine base up fast, without the same effect on the pH. Now this does have a pH of about 9, so it is going to increase your pH a bit, but not as much as if you add sodium hydroxide, which has a pH of about 14. Very, very basic. What else can you use in your spa? So we've driven up our pH. And you realize, oh no, my pH is out of whack. Maybe you're starting to see some scale forming and stuff. And once again, you go to your chemicals and you realize, oh, I got no saltwater balance, or I've got no pH adjustment for pH down, adjust down, any of the pH decreasers that you could use. Well, what else could you use? Well, if you're on a salt system and you have the cell cleaner is citric acid, so you could use a little bit of that. They have pool acid, which is acid magic, which is diluted hydrochloric acid or muriatic acid. You could use that. But one of the things that we almost invariably have right in our own pantry is vinegar. You could just use some vinegar to bring your pH down. I also recommend people using vinegar to clean the upper edge of their spa and the underside of their cover, because it will get rid of any of those nasty Pseudomonas and stuff that sits on the lip. It's an excellent cleaner, and because we typically use salt systems, a little acid in the water is going to bring the pH down. That's not going to hurt it at all. Again, regular vinegar is fine. You want to gain, this particular one is double strength because it's cleaning vinegar. So if you use double strength, you don't need to use as much of it. And actually, this is what I use on my spa to bring my pH down on my spa all the time. It's just some vinegar. And people say, well, you know, it's going to make the spa smell like vinegar. It's not very much that you're adding. So like again, on a typical spa, a quarter cup of this to make an adjustment to your pH is also in liquid form. So it's going to work very, very quickly, and it'll drive your pH down. So you could use this instead of using the typical adjust down or saltwater balance is sodium bisulfite. And I actually find that a lot of people are sensitive to sulfates, and so I prefer this. I also like the citric acid is another good one, or the hydrochloric acid, which is a very strong acid. So, you know, the nice thing about these products is they're safe. They're really safe, right? You know, you don't have to worry about. Now, one thing I do tell people is never mix these things together, right? Never mix these things together. It would cause chlorine gas to form. You don't want that to happen. But you could certainly treat for one and then treat for the other very shortly afterwards. Because it's mixed in the water, it's very diluted. You don't have to worry about a reaction in that case. But that's something to think about. Well, what else could you use? What if you had too much pH decreaser added to the water and the water was acidic? Well, you can use baking soda. You can just use regular old baking soda. In fact, this we actually use to increase alkalinity, but it also has a pH that's higher than the ideal range. So our ideal range is 7.2 to 7.6. This is going to be, will drive your pH up. So if your pH is too low, you can add this, and this will also increase the alkalinity at the same time, which means your pH won't float around as much. So again, this stuff is pretty cheap, and we almost invariably have a box of this somewhere in the house. So if you needed to make an adjustment, this is another thing that you could use. So something in your home that you could use. The other one that I use from time to time, it's not that common, but every now and then, especially people that use salt systems that aren't regulated like Spa Boy, if you aren't using the spa and you forget to lower the output, the chlorine output, then the chlorine can build up here. This also happens with people that use tablet dispensers, or if they're manually adding chlorine. Sometimes they have the tablet dispenser open too much and it gets way too much chlorine in the water. You know, you test it with your strips and it's bright purple and you're like, oh my goodness, there's so much chlorine in this water. You open it up and you can smell it as soon as you open the tub. Well, what do you do about that? Well, they have products that you can buy called Exit. There's a couple of other ones I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's specific products that you can add. Well, one of the ones that I tell people you can use is you can just use good old peroxide. So most of us can get this at any grocery store. A lot of the corner stores have it. Any drugstore will have this, and it's pretty cheap. This was a $2 bottle of peroxide, and it doesn't take much. You know, you can add a few tablespoons of this, and suddenly that chlorine level will drop very, very quickly. So if you ever find yourself in a case where you've got way too much chlorine in the water and you still want to use your hot tub fairly quickly, turn your jets on, add a little bit of peroxide. You know, I have a swim spa, so the swim spa, I'd probably take this whole bottle to bring it down, but it works very, very quickly. Within 15, 20 minutes, your chlorine level will be dropped, and that's about it. Like realistically, there's not much else that you need to do when it comes to managing your spa. You need to manage the sanitization. You can use the sanitizers and the liquid chlorines in place of shock. The other thing is you need to adjust your pH. So you can use the vinegar and the baking soda to adjust your pH. So if you find that you don't have the chemicals that your local shop carries, these are things in your own home that you can use to look after your hot tub. Inexpensive, available, and safe. So I'm John Keirstead for Arctic Spas Vancouver Island. I hope you enjoyed the video.